afternoon. On July 4th, 2022, at approximately 10:15 a.m., Highland Park Police were on the scene of an active shooter in the area of Central Avenue and 2nd Street, Highland Park, while an Independence Day parade was in progress. The Lake County Coroner's Office was notified and responded to the scene. It is with a heavy heart that I bring to you the names of the victims of that tragedy. 64-year-old Catherine Goldstein of Highland Park, 35-year-old Irina McCarthy of Highland Park, 37-year-old Kevin McCarthy of Highland Park, 63-year-old Jacqueline Sondheim of Highland Park, 88-year-old Stephen Strauss of Highland Park, 78-year-old Nicholas Toledo Zaragoza of Morelos, Mexico. We have also been notified that there is a 7th victim that died at a hospital located outside of Lake County. I will now give the microphone to the Mayor of Highland Park, Mayor Nancy Rodering.
The Highland Park community, like so many before us, is devastated. It is impossible to imagine the pain of this kind of tragedy until it happens in your backyard. Our focus the last 36 hours has been on the perpetrator of this heinous crime. As we now put the names and faces of those lost yesterday, family, friends, guests, longtime residents of the Highland Park community, our focus shifts to the victims and those left behind. This crisis has devastated entire families and our community in a single moment, and we know it will take time to heal. On behalf of the community and the world that mourns alongside us, I offer loved ones of those who passed our condolences. I thank those who have organized prayer vigils to help support the weight of our shared sorrow. We've listed those on our website, and while we're hurting, we know that we will continue to come together and support each other as we always do in difficult times. We are Highland Park strong.
Thank you, Mayor. There were some questions at our last press briefing about prior contacts that law enforcement may have had with Crimo III. We've done some research, gathered some reports, and I'm going to relay some information from 2 prior instances that occurred here in Highland Park. The first was in April of 2019. An individual contacted Highland Park Police Department a week after learning of Mr. Crimo attempting suicide. This was a delayed report, so Highland Park still responded to the residents a week later, spoke with Crimo, spoke with Crimo's parents, and the matter was being handled by mental health professionals at that time. There was no law enforcement action to be taken. It was a mental health issue handled by those professionals. The second occurred in September of 2019. A family member reported that Crimo said he was going to kill everyone, and Crimo had a collection of knives. The police responded to his residence. The police removed 16 knives, a dagger, and a sword from Crimo's home. At that time, there was no probable cause to arrest. There were no complaints that were signed by any of the victims. The Highland Park Police Department, however, did immediately notify the Illinois State Police of the incident. Shifting gears a little bit, talking about the investigation itself. The community has been absolutely terrific with providing information to law enforcement investigators throughout this. But we're asking the community to, if they're able to dig a little deeper and recall some specific instances from the event, based on video surveillance recovered by our investigators, we're very certain that there was a female witness who saw Crimo drop an object inside of a red blanket behind Ross 25 Central Avenue immediately following the shooting. We've not been able to identify this witness yet, but we're asking, if you are the witness and you are hearing this, please call 800, call FBI. Investigators really would like to speak to you about this. We're also asking that anyone with any firsthand information about Crimo relevant to this investigation also call 800-CALL-FBI. Please keep in mind, though, we're asking for firsthand information that could be relevant, that could help investigators. We're not asking for third-party information or information heard through the grapevine, only if it's firsthand knowledge that you have. To update the victim count, including those that have perished, there are approximately 45 injured or deceased from this incident. At about 5:30 this evening, the state's attorney's office will be holding a press conference, and we anticipate an announcement of charges at that time. With that, we'll take some questions.
Chief, so going to this September incident, obviously people are going to look at this and say, well, this could have been an opportunity to stop what we saw here. Your view on that, and how are these things supposed to be handled? How do you stop a shooter if someone's calling police saying, hey, we have a problem?
So the question is the response to the September incident. The police responded there. Police can't make an arrest unless there is probable cause to make an arrest or somebody is willing to sign complaints regarding the arrest. Absent the police don't have power to detain somebody. Now, if there is an issue where there is the necessity to involuntarily commit somebody to the hospital, that's an option, but that wasn't an option at that time. That it didn't fall in that category. But nonetheless, Highland Park Police did notify the Illinois State Police of that.
But as a law enforcement professional, you see someone who has said, I want to kill someone, then he can purchase several guns, like you said, legally. How do you view that?
The threat was directed at family inside of the home.
Yeah, but he could even buy guns when he make a clear threat to his family.
So in order to purchase a gun legally in Illinois, one has to possess a FOID card. That's a process that is solely managed through the state police, and I'm not able to speak to that process.
Chris, you mentioned how much the community has been helpful in this case with videos, with sending information to you guys. So many people I've been talking to are asking, how can this be prevented in the future? Given the amount of social media posts, this sort of disturbing content that he had posted, would you recommend that community members in this community or others flag police to that kind of information? You said you weren't aware of it beforehand. If you were aware of it, could this have prevented something like this, considering the red flag laws and other laws here in the state?
So the question is essentially social media. If we had known about some of the posts, would we have investigated? Do we encourage the community to report those? And the answer is absolutely. If the public sees something that is concerning online with anybody, they should notify the social media network it's posted on, notify local law enforcement, and that's when we get involved and we conduct an investigation. Law enforcement's going to do everything they possibly can to ensure the community is kept safe. But if we don't know about it, it's hard for us to investigate.
Under the red flag laws in this state, though, would this potentially have been enough for you to confiscate weapons or take some sort of action?
So in the case of September, the knives that Cremo possessed, they were confiscated and they were secured for safekeeping.
In the case of the rifles and considering the social media posts and the videos that we have now.
So at that time, there was no information that he possessed any firearms, any rifles. Would that be enough if he's making threats? It's a case-by-case basis. I don't want to speak broadly to the issue. It depends on the circumstances. There are circumstances where law enforcement does have that authority to obtain a seizure order, but it is situational dependent every single time.
Chris, there's a report that Cremo visited a synagogue here in town during Passover. Do you know anything about that? Can you speak to it?
That's nothing I know about at this time.
Chris, you mentioned that the weapons, the rifles were legally purchased in this general Chicago area, but can you specifically say when they were purchased?
They were purchased after that September incident. I don't have the exact dates. I believe it was in 2020 and 2021.
Chris, earlier this morning we were discussing whether we had any additional information on motivation. You said not yet. Is there any new information in that regard?
Investigators have been really tirelessly working since Cremo was taken into custody, trying to determine motive. At this point, there is no definitive motive that he had.
Is he talking?
He has been talking to investigators.
Chris, anything on the handgun part of things? When was his FOID card?
I don't have that information right now.
The object that you said was dropped behind Ross. What do you know what that was?
It was the rifle, and it was in a red blanket.
Chris, do you have any information that he may have tried to, after the shooting, tried to check himself into a hospital, Lutheran General Hospital? Have you heard any reports of that?
No, we do not have that information.
Just to follow up on the last September incident, you said that involuntary committing him was not an option. Can you explain that?
Based on that time, based on those circumstances, that was not an option. It did not fall in that category.
What would it require?
Again, it's case by case specific.
Were Irina and Kevin McCarthy husband and wife, brother sister? What's their relationship?
I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't know.
Chris, do you have
Jennifer, do you
anything on
know?
the handguns that you talked earlier about? How many were there? Were they legally purchased? Anything on that? A count, a sheer number?
So he had purchased five
Five
firearms. Five firearms, and that includes rifles and handguns as well.
So the other three legally purchased and they were handguns?
There were a combination of which, I don't have the exact count, at least 2 rifles, some pistols, and possibly a shotgun. Those were seized at his father's home pursuant to a search warrant yesterday.
What was the size of the knife collection, and did he ever get it back after the incident?
I would have to do a little research on that.
What time period were those 5 weapons purchased?
Approximately a year.
Is there any information about that 7th victim who passed away in age, perhaps?
Not yet, but we are working on obtaining some information.
What county is that victim in?
Cook.
Cook.
If the charges are being filed, as you said, probably around 5 o'clock, does that mean there will be an arraignment likely tomorrow morning? Or?
That would be my yes. If charges are filed today, it's very likely he'll appear in bond court tomorrow morning.
Do you know do you have more evidence that, or more explanation of what you found in the car? You said the rifle was found in the blanket. What you found? Give more specifics on that.
Evidence technicians are collecting a lot of shell casings, but as far as anything of evidentiary value, that's the extent.
In the car, you said there was rifles, the other rifle?
In the car, there was a rifle.
Anything else?
Was it loaded?
I would have to check and get back to you.
Do you know where he was heading in that car with that heavy rifle?
He drove around to a number of places. He drove into Wisconsin, then he came back into Illinois. That's when the alert person who recognized the vehicle description from the press briefing called 911, and he was stopped.
Chris, are you able to speak to any federal investigation, any possible federal indictments where you would be brought into the federal system?
So the FBI, the ATF, our federal partners, the Department of Justice are very involved in this case. I can't speak for them. All I can say is they are on the ground here working with us in lockstep. And I could take 2 more.
You know where in Wisconsin?
Going back to the September incident, so police notified state police. What was the follow-up from state police at that point? And was there any monitoring given what had happened of his social media accounts then? And should there have been?
Do you want to speak to that?
My name is Master Sergeant Delilah Garcia. I'm Public Information Officer, Deputy Chief. So basically in September of 2019, ISP did receive information from Highland Park Police Department, and at that time, the individual named in the report did not have a FOID card or anything to revoke or to review. So at that point, that FOID part of it was our stance on that.
And there was nothing done to say this person shouldn't be able to get. Is there any mechanism to say this person shouldn't be able to get a FOID card in the future? Is any action like that taken?
Well, at that time, basically, so he didn't have a pending application, so there was nothing to review at that time when we got that notification. We didn't know, and a few months later, something else would happen.
And what would state police have to have done or have to have seen in order to try to involuntary commit someone based on those facts?
Involuntary commit someone?
Right. So the lead came to you to follow up on after looking at the facts and that. Was that an option that you considered? Well, this person might need to be involuntarily committed?
Well, there was no FOID application at the time.
Correct. But the lead came to you, right? This person had knives. Obviously, there was a threat that was posed. So your role was only whether he had a firearm or not?
Right.
State law, does it allow you to flag someone and say, hey, we're flagging this person, they should be... Are you allowed to say this person can't get a FOID card?
More questions regarding that procedure from the state police will be forthcoming. So we know there's going to be some questions directed to the state police on procedure, how FOID card applications work, when a notification comes in from local law enforcement. That is much better answered by the state police. It's very hard to speak to their policies and procedures. One more.
Where in Wisconsin he traveled to, and how did you track? Was it iPass?
I don't want to get into how we know he was in Wisconsin, but we know he traveled to the Madison area before turning around and coming back to Illinois.
Did his parents,
Last question.
Did his parents ask, was his parents involved when the knives were taken from him? Did they report that he was threatening and the reason why they came to the house with the knives?
A family member reported that he was being threatening. So,
in other words, the family member reports the knives being there, but then he's buying guns and nobody said nothing.
I'm not quite following your question. The police responded. The police responded in September, okay, to this call. They responded. They took the knives out of the home. They filed the paperwork with the Illinois State Police. At that time, there was no function to make an arrest.
But
there was
the
no.
parents are there watching him buy 5 to 6 or 7 guns.
I don't know if the parents were there. I can't
Thank
speak
you.
to that.
All right.
All right. Thank you. We'll be back at 5:30.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys, just as a reminder, we're going to the west side of the scene at this point, Central and Green Bay.